Henry VIII, his great matter, Leviticus versus Deuteronomy. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, and so that was, this is early in the kind of Reformation, and people in that at that time weren't quite sure how all of this was going to go. And it's very much um, what I think is interesting about that is, and there are a lot of people have written on the divorce and what caused it, and there's so many different points of argumentation in there. There's so many factors that lead into it, but what I think is interesting is that he did consistently frame his scruples about his marriage to Catherine of Aragon in scriptural terms. That it was always framed as a question of hermeneutics. Yes, absolutely. That question of Leviticus versus Deuteronomy. Leviticus says that you do not marry your brother's wife. Deuteronomy says you must marry your deceased brother's widow and provide children in his name. And Catherine of Aragon, of course, was married to Henry's brother for a few months. Henry's older brother. Henry was the second son. He wasn't supposed to be king. Henry's older brother passed away after only a few, not even a few months, just a few weeks really of marriage to Catherine of Aragon. And Henry VII didn't want to lose Catherine of Aragon's sizable dowry, which had only been half paid at that point, and so she stays around in the country for quite a while, and then when Henry VIII becomes king, he marries her. And gets a papal dispensation for this because of that previous marriage to his brother. Then after 20, fast forward 20 years, is it because Catherine hasn't provided a male heir? Is it because Henry's had, that Anne Boleyn has caught his eye? But what he frames it as is that he's now started to have the scruple of conscience because of Leviticus, that Leviticus has said, you cannot marry your brother's wife, or specifically, do not reveal the nakedness of your brother's wife, and that if you do this, you will not have children. And so he's seeing this as an explanation for why perhaps he's not had an heir. And it basically, this is an example of where an apparent seeming contradiction in scripture, and both sides of the debate were very much, that it was just an apparent contradiction, that it became an apparent contradiction of scripture becomes a world, across the world stage, or at least across the European stage, and is argued about across Christendom. And the arguments that pile up on this, reams and reams of words, of paper, of opinions going about. The Pope even, at one point says no one is allowed to write any more opinions about this on pain of excommunication because like, just stop. Yeah, and so the fact that this was very much an exegetical question, how do we approach scripture and how do we weigh? Because of course, Henry frames it as Leviticus says I can't do this, but Catherine's side brings in Deuteronomy and says, no, not only can you, you have to. So how that seeming contradiction is reconciled is crucial to how the divorce goes on. And one of the things I say in the book is that it tells us so much about how about approaches to scriptural hermeneutics in that time. So for example, approaches to the Hebrew text was really emerging, and you're really starting to see crucial arguments to and for and recourses to the original text of Hebrew, that quite a few of what have been defined as kind of crucial early defenses of returning to the Hebrew sources and using those as a reliable way to elucidate what the text really means, are being written in the context of the divorce and trying to explain how we should really try to fit these two verses together. It's also very much that kings and high politics weigh on how we approach understanding the text of the Bible. But another thing that I think is really important there is that the way that people have tended to view the divorce, and certainly people have talked about scripture in it before, but because they've been talking more about what approaches to scripture can tell us about the divorce, and I'm looking at more what the divorce can tell us about approaches to scripture. The people have tended to focus on kind of like who won the scriptural argument there, and what I say is nobody won the scriptural argument with Henry VIII's great matter. He just made a new church. Nobody down tools and was like, oh yes, you are right. This you got the answer, you hit it. It just each side amasses this opinion, and they're and it really is fantastic how much they decide what their opinion is, and they amass opinions to support it, and kind of you're wrong if you just think the other way. Like, so Henry and Catherine's side did this as well. The emperor, her nephew Charles V, also consult, both of them, Henry and Catherine's side, consult all the universities of Europe basically to amass all these opinions about which one, Leviticus or Deuteronomy, which one? And that wasn't an unusual thing, to get a university opinion weighing in on a particular issue. But what Henry especially really wanted to establish was consensus, because this is the point, that these verses can't contradict. So it doesn't help to just say, oh, well, these people say this and these people say that, so I want consensus. So he very much frames it as that it's framed as he doesn't want he doesn't want the best theologians, he wants all of them. And he publishes, on behalf of Henry, he's published a report of these universities' decisions about, okay, which first takes priority here, or which, what applies in this case rather than takes priority, because of course all scripture is equally important. But
right.
But which takes priority in this, which applies in this instance. And he publishes it, and it's published, and it's a look at this universal consent to all the universities of Christendom that all agree that basically Leviticus applies in this case, and Henry shouldn't have married his wife. But what happened was he just didn't publish the ones that were received in the negative. So he just leaves those ones out.
Convenient, yeah.
Yeah.